Langley Speedway has released their Hampton Heat entry list. The Hampton Heat, if you're unfamiliar with it, is the second entry in the Virginia Triple Crown race. The first one was held over the July 4th holiday weekend at South Boston Speedway. This is the second race. The third one is held later in the year at Martinsville. Absolutely epic racing. These are the premier races for the late model stocks that race primarily in Virginia and North Carolina and down there in Florence and South Carolina. And that's primarily where they are. But let's look at the entry list here. We have the number 0 of Landon Pembleton. He did win the Martinsville race 2 years ago. He could be a big threat here. He was racing just 2 weeks ago at Langley, getting some practice in there, but also racing in their twin weekly series. Brandon Pierce, the number 2. If you should know him, he's always racing in a lot of these big late model stock races, usually races for Lee Pulliam. I'm not sure if he's still racing for Lee Pulliam now, though, anymore. And then you got Matt Waltz. You've got Trey Williams. Trey Williams is a regular at Dominion Raceway. He's also he is very familiar also with Langley, primarily in the Legends cars, though, but he has been racing a late model at Dominion alongside his Legends car. You've got Brenden Queen, former track champion at Langley Speedway. He's been struggling there, though, recently, mainly because Connor Hall has just been absolutely dominant. Connor Hall, 10 races there, 10 wins. But Brenden Queen is definitely a favorite. He's I think second in points in Cars Tour. Had a strong outing as well at South Boston. I think he eventually finished maybe top 5 after the DQs. I have to go back and look at that. Ronnie Bassett Jr. Has been racing the Cars Tour, always a threat. Mason Bailey, he runs weekly, usually at Dominion, and he's been in South Boston as well. Definitely no stranger to the Virginia races. Bobby McCarty, always a threat. Cars Tour Series champion, was eventually declared the winner at South Boston after Carson Kvapil was disqualified. And then next, Carson Kvapil, the guy who won, technically, like when you thought he won the South Boston 200. I also believe he's the current points leader in the Cars Tour Late Model Stock Series. Definitely going to be a threat racing for Junior Motorsports. Huge threat there. Hopefully he's got everything managed. They've aligned their rule books. They got everything there. They won't get DQ'd, but he definitely will be a threat in this race. We got Cody Bryant out of Chesapeake, Virginia. Rodney Boyd out of Yorktown. Nick Smith, Hampton, Virginia. He's a local boy. Chase Burrow, King William, Virginia. He's been racing the Cars Tour, sometimes races up at Dominion as well. Jared Fryar, Cars Tour regular. He won the Hampton Heat last year. Basically had absolutely zero competition after that last stage break and just kind of took it away. Logan Clark, he's been racing at Dominion in South Boston and is going to be joining the Cars Tour, I believe, as well. He announced that on Facebook. So should be interesting to see how he does. Stacy Puryear, he's been racing at South Boston. He's been coming out for a lot of these big races at both Dominion and South Boston this year. Greg Edwards, local Langley, multi-time track champion, will definitely be a threat. Craig Eastep as well will be a threat, local Langley driver. Jacob Borscht will be there. He had one of the most epic finishes at South Boston last year when he and Corey Heim wrecked crossing the finish line. Unfortunately, Heim was able to take the win, but that was one of the most exciting finishes to the race, to a race I've seen in a long time. And it was phenomenal. I mean, you were standing on. If you were there at the race, you were standing up. If you were watching on Flow Racing, you were standing up on the edge of your seat. It was great racing. But he's been struggling a little bit this year, mainly racing weekly at South Boston, getting top 5s, but not getting wins. He did win recently, though. I think it was last week he won. Peyton Sellers, obviously a threat, won Martinsville last year. Has had some tough luck this year, both at Dominion and at South Boston. Been getting caught up in a number of wrecks and stuff like that. Been basically swapping wins at South Boston with Carter Langley down there. Casey Wyatt, local driver there. Cole Bruce, he mainly has been racing at Dominion, but he's also been, I think he's been racing some Cars Tour races as well. It'll be interesting to see what he does. I don't want to insult Cole Bruce, but he's usually middle of the pack type guy. Woody Howard, local Hampton guy. There's a lot of local guys racing in this race. this year. Chris Horton Jr. Coming out of North Carolina. I'm actually not familiar with him, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. That's one of the names that I don't actually recognize. Riley Music, he is a local. I think he won the limited late models, or the Virginia Racers is what they call it, or like the sportsman class, depending on what track you go to. They have all these different names. I actually think it's quite confusing to try and figure out which one it is, but you eventually do figure it out. But he's going to be racing the late model as well. He's been racing late model as well at Langley Weekly, so that should be interesting. Then Ryan Matthews was I think he was like the AA winner when he was racing at Dominion in the limited late models of the Virginia Racers 2 years ago. He moved up to the late models last year and has been racing at Langley Weekly, and he's been racing there as well. He's good. I think he finished third in 2 weeks ago in the second twin. Eddie Johnson, the ageless, been around since forever. See what he's been doing. I mean, I think his son has actually been driving that car, and they've been running it as a limited late model at Langley. But it'll be interesting to see what he does. He usually is able to stay out of the wrecks, and he might be there at the end, maybe get a top 10 or something like that. Connor Hall, I definitely think Connor Hall is the favorite. Did a video of that last week. Again, 10 wins in 10 races at Langley, and he won the Cars Tour race there earlier this year as well. Definitely the favorite. Trevor Ward, he actually was one of the top guys at the South Boston 200. Really got behind the 8 ball due to some wrecks early on, but was able to, I think, get it into the top 5. Unfortunately, he had a motor blow at South Boston last year, so hopefully they've got that fixed and that car is cranking. Definitely could be a dark horse to win. Terry Carroll, local guy, is always running around. Definitely could be a threat. Justin Carroll as well. Local guy as well, Langley. And then Sam Yarborough. Sam Yarborough, always a threat. His South Boston 200 race ended early due to a wreck. I think he was the first guy out. I think it might have been mechanical. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But he was one of the first guys out. But he's always a threat. Dominated down at Myrtle Beach before they destroyed that track. And I think he's been racing Car Store a little bit this year as well. So he's definitely a threat. So it should be a good race. A lot of 32 cars. I'm a little surprised there aren't some more on here. I thought we might have had a little bit higher car count, but 32 is really good. Some of the best in the business. Should be hopefully a good race. Hopefully it's definitely better than last year. Not to take anything away from Jared Fryar, but that race last year was one of the most boring races I watched on Flow Racing. And I even talked to Davey Callahan, who was racing in that race last year. He's a local driver at Dominion Raceway, and he even said he was bored in the cockpit because they were only running half throttle, so he could imagine how boring it was to watch, and it just was. It was boring, and I don't know if it was the way they had the stage brakes set up or anything like that, but it did not make for good racing because everyone was just kind of sitting back on half throttle trying to save their tires. No one was being aggressive. No one was kind of pushing the ball. And it was a little bit disappointing. So hopefully that strategy changes up this year. We get to see some exciting racing because we know we can get some really good exciting racing in the late model stock division. We saw that in the South Boston 200, some great racing there. We saw it most recently in the Cars Tour at Dominion. So we even last week at South Boston during the weekly racing, some really exciting racing happening there. There was they didn't have many car count, but they had about 5 cars, and they were all up there racing for the win before they they took each other out. But if you're wondering when this race starts, here is the schedule. 8:15 is driver introductions, and then we've got the pre-race ceremonies beginning at 8:30 with the invocation and the national anthem, and then the green flag is expected to drop at 8:45 p.m. I know I will be watching, but I really do hope it will be a better race than it was last year. But that is your entry list for the Hampton Heat 200. Who do you think is going to win? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, if you like this content, please hit that like button and subscribe as well.